Hello, welcome to Business Foundations in the face of COVID. We are now live. Thank you for joining us. Let's see here. Where are we going to start? We got lots of goodness today. So my name is Aaron Eden. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Community Investment Corporation. My why is really to help others to continuously innovate so that they can make a huge impact in their own lives and the lives of those that are around them. So this is a perfect opportunity to help others. CIC's vision is to create a better life for local residents in Southern Arizona. And we primarily invest in our region's economy through small businesses, nonprofit organizations, those that are actually serving our communities, trying to create a better set of opportunities for them. And we know that it creates a nice ripple effect and has high leverage. And so it's a huge opportunity to help our community. Of course, right now, things are really tough. I've spoken to so many business owners over the last few weeks that have had to let people go or in the process of letting people go or holding on by a thread. Others where they've been fortunate in the timing of all of this and their business is completely taking off. Our technology has our technology adoption has probably been accelerated by about 5 years in the last month. And so we're just seeing this huge shift in things and a lot of uncertainty. And so, I'm super excited to introduce our guest today. We've got Arizona Corporation Commissioner and President of the Marquez Peterson Group, Leah Marquez Peterson. She was appointed to the Arizona Corporation Commission by Governor Ducey in May of 2019. And the commission's primary duty is to regulate the state's utility services to make sure that we've got safe and reliable energy. And she's also the first Hispanic woman to serve in a statewide seat in the history of Arizona. In addition to all of that, she's also an entrepreneur and has been in our community for many years. She served as the president and CEO of the Tucson Hispanic Chamber from 2009 to November of 2018, and has run multiple businesses here in the area. So thank you for joining us, Leah. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Before I introduce Greg, want to let everybody know who's online. Thank you to all of you that have joined. There's some polls that are visible. We'd love for you to please fill out those polls. Those will help Greg and Leah to understand the audience a little better since we can't see you. Best to be able to help with our make sure that our responses and the things we talk about are specific to what you need. And also, you're welcome to submit in the Ask a Question box, submit questions for them, which I'll integrate into the conversation as we go through. So with that, I'd like to introduce Greg Teasdale. For more than 30 years at venture-backed emerging growth companies and more than 20 years at the C-level, Greg is a local mentor, an angel investor, and provides guidance to small emerging companies in the development of their business strategies, helps them with creation of detailed business plans and business processes, and, all around nice guy. So welcome, Greg. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So let's kick things off. In your opinions, what are some of the top things that business owners need to be focused on now in this moment?
Go ahead, Leah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. I think this webinar was actually promoted as kind of what is the new normal. And I think that statement alone really resonates with a lot of businesses. This is truly a time we need to be assessing how will demand shift for our products and services and really listening to our customers. Right now, I'm also serving as president of NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners here in the Tucson area. And we've been holding frequent check-ins with our members every week to just see how are we doing. And we're a combination of retail, service. We even have some manufacturers involved in our chapter. And every business is handling this differently. I think the use of technology is key. And some, you're right, have had to lay off folks and are really dependent on the payroll protection program coming through. And thankfully, Congress has moved and we've got that second set of cash coming in. But I think this is really a time of assessments, whether it's dusting off that business plan or strategic plan. I'm really hearing people need to be looking out even just 90 days. This can't be something that's long term. Things are changing so quickly, and really people are trying to determine where their business will stand in 60 days or even 6 months.
I'll jump in. So the way I'm thinking about this now, I was looking for, what's the high order thing we want to think about on this when we're done. We walk away from this. What did you remember from what Lee says, what Aaron says, and what I say? This is a business crisis we're going through. And if you spend any time in small businesses, you get a crisis every few years. I'm not saying this is like all of them because everyone is different, but in a small business, when you have a crisis, it usually means somebody's getting laid off, and it usually means that your vendors are getting stretched. And in many and whereas we like our leaders to be straightforward and act and to make the hard decisions, and everybody will attest the fact they're prepared to do that. When you actually have to do it, it gets real. It gets very real. And so with the way things are going and where your companies are going to be, you're going to be looking at making these hard decisions with people that are your friends that you've known for a really long time. And in my experience, when I've gone through these things, you've got to set certain things aside. You got to set aside your guilt. The most important thing is to take care of yourself. And when I say yourself, I mean you and your business, and that the business survives. The best thing for you, for the economy, for the community, is that you come out of this as strong as you can hope to come out of it. And if you don't get tough, and you try to salvage a couple extra people, or you're going to pay your vendor a little quicker, and you run out of cash and your business crashes, you have done nobody any good. So, my message basically is, don't feel guilty. Right now, you've got to take care of yourself and your company. And if you do that, when you come out of this, you'll be able to make a bigger contribution to the community and the economy going forward. So.
It wasn't as a result of COVID necessarily, but I mean, I just had to live that, letting go 6 employees, my last business, and ultimately shutting it down because of running out of capital. And one of the things I was not sleeping. I was, probably mild depression, trying to figure out how to deal with letting those folks go that I cared about so much. And it was so surprising when I finally, got the guts to have the conversation, as I met with each of them, because we had been transparent with them about what was happening and shared what was going on. Almost every single one of them said, yeah, this sucks, but I totally understand where you're coming from, and I know what's been going on, and I'm not surprised. And even a couple of them said, I'm surprised. I thought you would have done this sooner, right? And I was like, oh my God, like, it's amazing. And so, we hired these people because they're incredible, and so give them that credit that you can work through that with them as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of this right now is also just your kind of how you're protecting, I guess, your emotions, your self-image through this, how you're responding. I think the first couple of weeks, I heard a lot of emotion from people. Just there's so much uncertainty. We don't know how long this will last. And I think there are things that you can be watching and doing to be more inspired and figure out what direction you're going. I had to stop watching the news because I was glued to the TV, and it was so depressing, and there weren't any answers there. It was just continued talking heads telling us about what their opinion was. But I know there are certain folks I listen to, certain things I read, so that I can keep my mind in the right place. And I think that's an important thing right now too.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Let me jump on that with the uncertainty. Aaron and I talked about this the other day. The idea that even though it's an uncertain time, as business leaders, we have to establish as much certainty as we can. So when I hear people saying we're going to reopen on April 30th or pick the date, and then there's that backlash of that's too soon, we shouldn't do this, should not do it, it's not the time. It's really important for people to see where they think the end of the runway is. If we get to whatever that date is and it's time to push it out, we'll push it out. Back in March, middle of March, Apple and Lululemon and a handful of other boutique retailers published statements that said they were going to reopen on April 8th. Well, April 8th came and they were a week ahead of that, and they said, this ain't happening. It's going to be the end of the month, and that's where they're at right now. But it's really helpful to the people around you, the people that work with you, that they get at least some sense that you've got a plan and that there is some certainty in this. It gives you something to shoot for. If you don't have an end, then it is the constant state of, I don't even know what to do today because I don't know when this is going to end. We'll put a plan in place. One of the things I've done in many of the companies I've been with is, I've prepared, I can't tell you how many budgets for companies. And one thing I tell everybody, we're going to have this budget. January 1st is going to come along. On January 2nd, the budget's going to be wrong. We're immediately going to verge off of the budget, off the plan for the year, because that's just how things happen. It's okay. It's okay to go there. It is better to set a good direction and then course correct as you go than just throw up your hands and go, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. So.
Greg, can you zoom in on that a little bit? You've led through the downturn in 2007, maybe other ones as well. Any examples you might be able to share of something where you had to really put together a plan around that and what that looked like?
So, Aaron talked about a little bit. I've been with 10 pro stage technology companies, as an employee, and then consulted with many others. And I've been through a whole bunch of these. I found that, one of the things that I picked up on that Aaron said is that being transparent. With the company I was with back in the 80s, we were hand to mouth for a really long time until we finally got some financing in and started to get some traction. And I was dealing with vendors, and I was the guy that was paying them and having to talk to them. And they were 60, 90 days out. And I found that, every day I had to get on the phone with these guys and say, this is what I can do. And when we get out of this, your loyalty will be repaid. If you don't work with me, well, that's your choice, and I'll do the best I can to get you paid. But if you work with me, things are going to be, I'm going to be more inclined to help you along. And it was really depressing, coming into work every day, knowing that you get your 90 days out with your vendor base. But I took it as a challenge to say, here's another day. I'm going to keep the production line going. We're going to keep product coming in the door and just go from there. I've been with companies that melted down. In the world of growth stage companies, there's two types of stress, good stress and bad stress. Today we're talking about bad stress. I've been through that a number of times. It just takes fortitude. You just have to step up and just do the right thing. So I could give you a whole bunch of examples, but it all comes down to the same thing. Don't hide. Don't avoid the phone calls. Don't avoid the conversations. Have them be as straightforward as you can. Say what you can, and then hope for the best. So.
And if I could add there too, I think communicating with your vendors is key. I was a retailer back during the 9/11 period. I owned a chain of gas stations and convenience stores, and we had some tough times. But I think you're right. You can't hide from vendors. You need to communicate. And right now, it's a totally different world. There's so many resources. With my corporation commissioner hat on, I'll advise people, contact your utility company. You can negotiate payment plans now. We've got commitments from our utilities not to disconnect, not to charge late fees. That includes electric, water, gas, and telecommunications. There are, I think, a lot of assistance out there that perhaps we wouldn't have had in a prior crisis, or that was a particular industry. This has just impacted everybody and everybody's business. So there are a lot of resources, and that you also don't have to go at this alone. Whether you're part of an industry association, a chamber, NABO, whatever it may be, a lot of people are getting together and talking and venting and sharing and talking about how they're getting through this. And I think it's important to talk to others who have similar interests, other small business owners at this time.
We've been working, CIC has been working with the Historic Fourth Avenue Coalition over the last few weeks, try to figure out ways that we can help all of those restaurants and bars and and shops and folks that are really getting hammered hard right now. And one of the biggest things that we're hearing from them is that they're flooded with opportunities, and it's like a fire hose. They're just not sure where to focus. I also see a question from who is this? Nick Knight in the chat about how we follow up and find out what money is available for various relief programs. Figure out who's out of money, who has money. Any suggestions you guys have for that?
Go ahead, Leah. You're staying
Okay.
close to it.
I'll start with that. Well, I'll back up to mid-March, it seems so long ago, but when the payroll protection program was announced, I think April 3rd is when it went live for most businesses, and April 10th for sole proprietors and those that are independent contractors and so on. What we heard at the time was you needed to respond immediately. It was really a timing issue. And as we saw now, looking back at it, that money went very quickly, and there's still so much need. What I understand is that if people have applied through their banks, that their application is still pending, I would be following up with that bank, because now that it's been approved for a second round, they need to make sure that they're moving as quickly as possible, not sitting on this. I've been sending a lot of referrals actually to CIC, because I think there's some local resources here, and I think Rio Nuevo is helping folks that are downtown, that you can also check out depending on your industry or what direction you're coming from. But there's a lot of different sources out there, and at this point, I haven't heard that the local resources have been completely drained, and now we've got a second shot at the payroll protection program.
Yeah, the other thing I want to add to that, Sam is posting, the Arizona Commerce Authority has a great resource page for small businesses. I would definitely second that. It's very well organized and easy to find things there. I'm actually, Greg, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I'm going to pull my boss, Danny Nee, into the conversation really quick so he can talk about, he's been staying at the front lines of this for CIC and has the most updated information. So
No, please, go ahead.
pull him in really fast just to talk about what he's seeing on this question, so we don't miss out on his expertise. All right, he's been invited. So I want to just see if there's any other questions that are sort of around this.
Can I mention something, Aaron?
Yeah,
I saw that Sonia just posted on chat, keeping an eye on that too, about our small business development centers. And I think when the payroll protection program first launched, I started getting a number of calls, as I'm sure others did, people needing help filling out the paperwork. And, can someone help me with this application? And that was a hard resource to find, but SBDC, I think, is a great resource. So look in the chat if you haven't already to see how you connect with them.
Beautiful. Hey, Danny.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm glad you did your makeup today.
I know, it's like, oh, I'm wearing a t-shirt and you're asking me to join. Okay, we'll do what we do.
So what are you seeing resources wise, and what's sort of the latest on funds that are available for entrepreneurs at this point?
I do think SBDC, our local SBDC here at Pima Community College, is really good. Ellen Curtin always has sort of the pulse of what's going on. She's a little bit ahead, knowing how the funds are flowing. So that is a great place to check in. In terms of what we're seeing, we are finally now seeing some of the PPP money flowing. It was only really this week that it started going, and this has made it also, just so people understand, challenging for those of us that are in this position of trying to help, because we're trying to come up with the products I think that are needed and the support that's needed, and we don't want to overlap with what's already there, and so for some period of time, we've been talking about trying to bridge the time until people got their money. Now they're getting their money. I think we saw the demand was so high that even in the second round, it's very possible that some people are going to potentially get shut out. And it's also, if if they're kind of late to the game to doing that, they might get shut out. And so we're still hoping to be able to find ways to support them. The other thing that we're actually doing, and I know it's hard to build something while this sort of crisis is going on, but that's what is demanded of us, is we have a few different platforms in terms of at least financial support where the community itself can actually loan money directly to businesses through. We have a partnership through the Tucson Kiva Hub, Growth Partners Arizona here, where businesses can get up and actually ask for loans from their customers, and that is not probably going to work for every business, but they also have 2 million lenders worldwide. We had 2 businesses go up on that in the last week, and they were funded within 2 or 3 days, so it wasn't even a long process. So I do think it's really looking at what are all the different types of resources, and then and this is the hard part, which I think you guys have suggested, is figuring out which ones are right for each business. Each business is unique, has its own problems and issues, and I think really talking to somebody about this who works in this space, just to help you if you're overwhelmed by all the information, to help you kind of sift through and say, hey, here are a few viable options. I think Greg had a very good point early on too about we have to have some sense of what we're shooting for in terms of a time that that restrictions may be lifted, and how we get back to business and to survive to that point, because I think that's where a lot of us are spending our time. And I just know Leah has been an incredible resource as well for us. She is constantly reaching out to me and letting me know of different things, and that I know that people get tired of their inboxes getting full, but in a really good way. People are sending around a lot of information about the different financial resources and informational resources around this topic. And my suggestion, quite honestly, is at this point, when there's still uncertainty, is you should be trying to gather as many of those resources as you can. This is not a time, I think, again, sort of Greg, like, take care of your business. This is not a time to necessarily say, well, maybe somebody else needs it more or doesn't. I know that's sure. I'm sure that's sure, but we don't know when the end of this is. And so for your own business, you should be trying, whether it's private sources, nonprofit sources like us, government sources, you should be trying to gather up as much as that as you can, because in the end, there are no prepayment penalties on any of these products. And if you don't need it, great. You can pay it back and return it, but you're in a worse position if you need it and can't get access to it.
Totally. Awesome.
And
Thank you so much.
Aaron, I think we don't know when this ends and doors are open again. Is it a slow growth, or is it flipping the switch and we've got immediate activity? And depending on how that goes, that's going to impact different businesses and different industries. I saw that Paul Mendoza put a comment up there about the start of a business. And as an Arizona Corporation Commissioner, I've been watching that. We actually handle all the incorporations in the state. And I asked our corporations division director to pull how many incorporations did Arizona have in March and April of 2019 as compared to this year. I was curious, can we see an impact already? And we averaged at 7,000 incorporations in the month of March and April 2019. This March, we were at 5,000. This April, we were around 2,000. So dramatic difference. I don't know if that means as soon as the switch is flipped and we're back in and the economy's moving again, if we're going to see double, triple what we had before. But at the Corporation Commission, we've prepared in that we can now expedite incorporations, and you can do it in a day online for a fee. So we're certainly getting prepared for that. But it's interesting to see how the economy has slowed and what that means to different types of businesses that are listening right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So
If you're also a local business, I think looking at Local First Arizona, they're a membership organization, and they really are focused on, again, the smaller entrepreneur, the local business. And I think, which we all agree in a lot of ways, is what gives the character to our different cities and locales. The bigger employers are incredibly important too, for sure. But the small businesses are the ones that sort of give us, that who we are and our sense of place. And Local First is a great place for that. Sorry, Greg.
No, it's okay. So back to Paul's point, looking for resources and help for this type of stuff. Well, this is what I've done for forever. People reach out to me all the time. The power of networking. I know we can't face-to-face network right now, but we will get back to that point. Power of networking is really important. And the reason I say that is we've mentioned SBDC and the Corporation Commission and the Commerce Authority and CIC and all the resources are out there, but it's really hard to say, I've got a full-time job, I'm working through this stuff on my business, and now I have to sift through this and try to sort out what's real, what's relevant, how do I get what I want, and not have to, and with the challenge of I don't have time to do this. That's where the power of networking comes in. For the folks out there, you just need to think about getting outside of your comfort zone and just reaching out. Be rude, be aggressive. I'm okay with it. I know these other guys are okay with it as well. You just got to go out and ask. And as you develop these relationships, you'll find that there are people that can get you through, get you to the right point faster than getting on the computer and going from site to site to site to site to site, and you find out, you get to like the page 7 and you go, oh, I'm not qualified for that or whatever. So again, not a great time to start face-to-face networking, but you can do it electronically, and when this thing ends, it'll be time to get out there and force yourself out of your comfort zone. On a similar topic with banks in general, the folks that are doing well with this payroll protection plan are ones that had existing relationship with banks. And a lot of folks would say, well, my relationship with my bank is at the branch level. I see the teller and that's it. It doesn't have to be that way. There are business community bankers out there. I've always found, and it's kind of my space, so I've always taken advantage of it. Go out and make the time to get to know the people so that when you need them, they will already know who you are, and they'll pick up the phone a little quicker for you, or they'll respond to your email before somebody else. I hate to have anybody else be disadvantaged, but that's another power of networking. Go find resources you need, and even now you can do it. So that when you need them, they're there. Again, not a great time for starting a relationship with a banker, but when we clear up with this, I would tell you, make it a point to go out and meet these people.
And I think there are a couple sites where they're trying to pull together the data, because what I hear from a lot of small businesses is it's all over. How do I find, truly what's going on? So I would suggest, and I'll try and type it in there, but for your family resources, if financially things are really tough and you need resources for family, it's ArizonaTogether.org is the website that the governor's launched that has all types of resources on it. I saw a question on unemployment insurance and things like that going on. Check out ArizonaTogether.org. And then for your business, the Arizona Commerce Authority has really been, I think, leading the charge. Someone posted earlier information and pamphlets and flyers that they put together. I've been trying to share that on social media a lot. There's a lot related to broadband access because there's so many families struggling throughout the state, especially in rural Arizona, who can't do this remote Zoom call or do e-learning and things that we're all maybe taking for granted. And so we need to really do what we can to assist those families and businesses. But I'll put those in the chat if someone hasn't already.
I got you covered. I threw it in there. Yep. Cool. Greg, so I'd like to transition the rest of the conversation to be sort of forward facing. But before I do that, I want to ask one more question, which is, who is it that asked this? This is Liz Hernandez posted this one about speaking to the needs of startups in these times. Do we give up on our ventures? So what do you say to folks that are feeling that way?
Oh boy, I got a lot of thoughts on that. If you had told me that you wanted to start a computer company out of a dorm room in Texas, I would have said that's a really bad idea. If you told me you want to have, back in the 60s, that you want to have next day delivery for mail and charge a surcharge for it, I would have told you that was a bad idea. So there's a lot of really great, and I'm thinking about Federal Express and Dell now. how they started. I've always felt that I am not the person to tell you that you should give up on your idea. One thing I know about entrepreneurs is that they are passionate. They will work themselves to the bone. They will push beyond any unreasonable level of expectation, and they have irrational expectations of success. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I would not tell anybody to quit, because you might just be right there, right on the cusp. At the same time, you got to do it. Let me also say that I think there's a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs, and they actually have a name for them. They call them entrepreneurs. You really don't have it in them to be entrepreneurs. You got to figure out which side of that you're on. But you know, I wouldn't want anybody to give up right now. It may change, rethinking things a little bit. Every company I've been with, it always took a whole lot longer and a lot more money, and there was a lot of frustration along the way. I know this is a particularly sensitive time, and this is different than anything I've ever seen. But I've been through a lot of these where it's just troublesome. And when is it going to get there? Are we going to get there? Are we going to make it? You're going to have those same questions outside of this. You know, if you're a true startup, unless you're lucky enough to be the one that just takes off with no pain, you're going to go through this again and again and again. And if you're a true entrepreneur, go for it. And if not, do a self-assessment. See if this is what you really need to be. So that's my response.
Maybe I'll add a little academic piece to that is, you know, prior to us being all in self-quarantine, there are lots of programs in Tucson for those considering startup. And I don't know the position they're in now, but if you're at home and willing to read, Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, is, I think, really critical right now. You know, why are you interested in being an entrepreneur? And then certainly studying what kind of demand and how your customers might have shifted during this crisis. There could be incredible business opportunities that come from this also in our new normal, right? So I think there's a lot of analysis that could occur during this time.
For sure.
There will be a lot of opportunities to come out of this. You know, how people are going to think about things differently. To Aaron's point, technology in this, you know, Zoom or whatever we're calling it these days, video stuff. This is taking off. It's going nuts, and it's not going to change. People are going to work from home more because everybody found out you can pull it off and not hurt your business. You don't want to do it every day normally, but you can do those types of things. And I'm always on the lookout for, you know, what's next. I heard the guy from Planet Fitness. You think Planet Fitness? What are they going to do? How are they going to emerge? Well, we've all heard if you're healthy, you will be able to fight off this virus better. And he thinks, and I can see where that would be the case, that there's going to be more people going to the gym. You'll need more separation at the gym, but there'll be more people going to the gym. And that's just a minor one, but there's a lot of them out there that you'll see when you go, oh yeah, that could be, and I can see how that can work. Anyway, that's right.
No, I think that's spot on. And in addition to that, you know, one of the biggest pieces of launching a successful startup is the timing. There's so much of it that you just have no control over. And like, this is an example of one of those times. And so, you know, if I was starting something brand new and I had starting that thing, you know, 2 months ago or 6 months ago, I would seriously reevaluate whether this fits, or if there's a bigger opportunity that exists at this point. But if it's something that I've already been knee deep in, and it's still needed, the pain point for the customer still exists. Maybe it's just changed a little bit. Then there's probably not a reason to give up. So I think there's that acceleration of technology. There's a lot of businesses that are growing significantly right now, and that's because they either had great timing or they got lucky. And so the shift on all of this helped them move forward. So to sort of build on that, looking forward, you know, as a business owner, how do we navigate through this? There's so much uncertainty and those kinds of things. How do we move forward?
Well, I'll add one opportunity, depending on your business, is you may have more time on your hands. Certainly we're at home. One thing that I've done for my own business, and I'm talking to a lot of NAWBO members about, is certification. Usually it's a pain. No one wants to pull all the information together. It takes time. But you can become a woman-owned business certified at the government and at the corporate level, and also minority-owned. and really explore that. That's usually the headache that most business owners don't want to go through is completing all that information. But this is perhaps the time to be researching new revenue streams like corporate and government and what that might look like after this this crisis.
And you can throw veterans in there as well as a protected class, if you will, or whatever we're calling the people who got the advantage groups. Yeah,
there's an organization I know I've certified my own business through is WeBank, and they do it for government and corporate for women-owned. But yeah, there are other resources at just sba.gov if you want to look at getting 8A certified or veteran-owned or minority-owned. And that could mean a whole set of customers perhaps you haven't been working on. This is also a good time because I think we're all living on social media to build your network and your database. Some in the past have just used social media as just to connect with friends from high school or whatever it was. But there's a real economic benefit to building your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Twitter feed right now, I think. And I know I've been working on that myself. And I think this is the time, because when else would you have the time to reach out and connect with people, make sure that they're doing well, anything you can do to help, and then also just build that network.
Great. Greg, you commented before about really drawing a line in the sand and saying, you know, hey, this date we're going to be reopen, and being open to that plan changing and being wrong and needing to adjust through that. What about so how do you get to that? Like, is there do we need to basically attempt to predict the future, or let's dive into some tactics there? As a business leader, what would that look like?
Okay, so something I just came across recently is the big difference between Jacinda Ardern, I think her name is, the woman that is the president of New Zealand, and the leaders of the top 7 countries in the world. She's getting a lot of credit right now because she put together a plan in place a month ago as to what it would look like. It's a 4-step plan as to how they're going to emerge from this. They're already at the 2nd level now on that. It's the same type of thing that we're trying to do, but right now our rules are the trend needs to be down and there needs to be testing. Well, she's much more comprehensive than that, what she put together. So it is one of those, how does your business play into the social distancing? What's the right way to go about it? If you're a retailer, do you need to thin your inventory on the floor and make more space for customers to move around and not feel, whereas they wouldn't be uncomfortable at all a month ago or 2 months ago standing right next to somebody, they're going to be that way going forward. So how do you attend to it in that regard? And then what are the rules in place? You may not necessarily be ready to reopen, but you can certainly draft your rules of operation right now. I have a brother that's going to work starting up next week. He's in New Jersey. I didn't think they were ready to start, but his job is one where it's just him going from place to place to place and doing what he does. And he says, I've got like 10 pages of stuff, rules that I have to follow when I go out and do this. So having a plan while you have time, to Leah's point, you have time. Think about what that means and how are you going to do this? As far as just, what the timing is, I struggle just like everybody else here when I read, and the media is crazy. Our leadership, notwithstanding Leah, of course, the leaders that a lot of them are saying stuff that you just scratch your head and you go, why are you doing this? And in many cases, it's it doesn't always feel it's like for the right reason. So you've got to be your own filter. Don't believe what you read and set your own set of rules. We know that some percentage, 4 or 5% of the people in this country have this virus, and maybe it's more. But it also means that 90 or 95% of the people don't. So how can you make things work knowing that 90, 95% of the people are healthy? You want to keep them healthy, but how do you make that work? I wish I had good answers. I think a lot of people are thinking about this. Nobody wants to go back too soon. Nobody wants to be the person that said, encourage you to go back and then have something bad happens. But at the other hand, we are not going to wait until vaccines in place in 18 months. So we're going to go back, and we're going to go back in a risk environment. So get comfortable with that and then say, okay, now that I know that those are the boundaries, let's figure out how to make that work. And I know that was wasn't a very detailed answer, because I don't have details. I just don't. So.
No, and I can add to that, that originally when Governor Ducey called for the stay-home order, it was till April 30th. Obviously, there was a march kind of on the state capitol building just a couple days ago for people to demand open now. So we're in this controversial time here in the state in terms of how soon is too soon? Are we safe? What will happen? I think there was an article just today in the Arizona Capital Times that spoke about looking at the counties in rural Arizona that haven't had the impact of the virus, like those of us in Pima and Maricopa. Do we start with those counties and work our way in, and over what period of time? I know a lot of the hospitals were talking about peaks in terms of their patients in the hospital the first week of May. So I doubt anything will happen prior to that. I mean, who knows? I don't have any answers or telling any state secrets here. I'm just telling you what I've read and followed. And I think it looks like it's still mid-May, June 1st, something of that nature. But you might see more action in some of the rural counties that haven't been as affected sooner than later.
I think the CEO of the startup that I've been advising, Fly here in town, actually did a really great job of handling this. He basically said, "What do we think is worst case scenario as a travel management platform? How long will it be before people start booking trips and sort of going back to that?" So he said, worst case scenario is probably 12 months. That we've got a year of, maybe it comes up a little bit, but that it stays pretty low for that 12 months. And how do we make sure that we've got a plan for how we'll survive and hopefully thrive if that scenario was to happen? And then he looked at another one that's like 6 months. Okay, great. Let's accelerate that a little bit. I think those were actually the only two scenarios that we looked at. We didn't look at a shorter term one. We felt like being conservative was a better way to go. But it took all but a couple of hours. But then the entire organization was really able to rally around that and say, okay, great. Here's where we need to go. And he put that together with all of us 3 weeks ago, and it's changed twice already. And so it's a little bit of scenario planning, right? Like, what do we can't predict the future, but the only way to keep moving is to put a stake in the ground and say, here's what I think is going to happen, and start moving forward.
Yeah, there are people that are more risk takers than not when it comes to things like travel and opening up and et cetera. And so it's hard to predict how this will happen. There's a lot of frustration. People do want to get out and just get out of their houses. So we will see things happen. My suspicion is it will happen a little faster than what we're seeing and what we're hearing. But you guys, I had a trip to Spain that was supposed to start like 3 days ago, and I had to cancel. And so the question for me is, when am I going to go to Spain? When am I going to go travel internationally? When am I going to travel around this country? And I'm going to do it. There's no question that. And for me, I'm not real certain when. It's not June or July, probably. Is it September, October? Yeah, I would think so. But that's how I view it. But other people, and I've been with startups, and I've been a risk taker, for a long time. Other people are going to be so hesitant they're not going to do it for a much longer period of time. It's really difficult to tell. And it's all to the points of Aaron and Leah. We just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. We were also talking about summer vacations that aren't going to happen and so on. But think how things might change. Renting RVs might be a hot industry right now. People may not get into airplanes, but maybe cruise ships will figure this out and how to promote cleanliness and how sanitized each of the rooms is, and there'll be a big run on cruising. Who knows? But I think people really need to rethink how they're messaging their business, how they're marketing it, if they're going to stay with that traditional industry, or perhaps how it's tweaked and how you find an entirely new customer base or revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds to me like the key takeaway from that is really put a stake in the ground, build a plan, but be ready be willing to adjust the plan as things change.
Yeah.
I think actually there's a nice dovetail on one of the questions that Robert had posted about talking about mentoring services like the local chamber, SCORE, or local consultants, and helping folks to manage through that. I think it fits nicely with the point Leah was making earlier about not going at this alone. What's your guys' take on that?
I'll put a plug in for Jeffrey Gitomer. If you've heard of him, I actually pulled his little book to hold up here. I totally made the Hispanic Chamber staff read this when I was the president there, the Little Red Book of Selling. But Jeffrey Gitomer is someone who does every single morning, I think it's 7 a.m. Tucson time, inspirational, motivational 30-minute talk on kind of get your butt out of bed and set your goals, and how are you pivoting your business and how are you responding to customers. And that kind of gets me going every morning. I really enjoy it. I've been sharing it with my friends and family. And I suggest that people find something like that, whether it's a local organization or a national figure who can help them rethink their business. Because what is our new normal? How are we pivoting and changing our business model? Everyone's business is going to change. So I think my suggestion would be, if you like sales, kind of rah, he's a little rough. I'll let people, it's more PG-13, but I'd recommend Jeffrey Gitomer if you like that kind of stuff.
I don't know. This is one of those things that, to the motivational thing, I think everybody motivates themselves in a different fashion. I think they would have seen that. For me, I feel much better if I get a good workout in. Other people just want to sit and meditate. You should take the time to figure that out, and maybe slow it down a little bit, as much as we've already slowed down enough as it is, but slowing it down in a contemplative manner, saying, I'm not just sitting here watching whatever is new on Netflix. I'm going to spend a half an hour thinking about stuff, and getting back to the working out. I've been a runner for 40 some years. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone with somebody and it's like, I don't know what we're going to do about that, but I'm going to go for a run. When I come back, I'll have some ideas. We should be using our brains as much as we possibly can. And sometimes when we get caught up in what we have to do right now, we forget to stop and just think, and turn off the phone, turn off the computer, and just quietly contemplate what we're trying to accomplish or where our business is going or whatever's troubling. So anyway.
No, I think that really goes back to the intention of pulling this together, is how do we pause and focus on the foundational components of being successful with our businesses. And that really requires us taking care of ourselves, taking that time to pause and reflect and build a strategy around where we want to go, put a stake in the ground. And then once you're charged up, get out and get back in the ring.
And I see a question, Aaron, on there related to unemployment. Do you want us to touch on what?
Sure, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I'll mention that, there have been so many unemployment claims. I serve on Pima County's Workforce Investment Board, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but at our board meeting just this past Friday, we talked about the incredible unemployment claims that have come in Pima County and in the state. And certainly as an independent contractor or someone self-employed, you can be applying for that too, as well as the payroll protection program. I don't know about your question about the federal government taking over that portion. What I suggest, though, is that you go to ArizonaTogether.org, because I brought that up even at the Pima County meeting, that we need to have as current data as we possibly can for every county on that site. And it's all coming from the one source, from our state government or Governor Ducey. So I suggest you take a look there. In Pima County, if you want to specifically speak to someone, there's the Pima County One Stop, or Pima County Action Center, it's called. If I can find the number quickly, I'll put it up there. Or if you Google it, Pima County One Stop, I'm sure they can answer that question on unemployment too.
Beautiful. So we are down to the last 10 minutes here. And thank you. Oh, I need to mark those questions as finished answering. I forgot. Crowdcast has this awesome thing when you're going back to the replay, you can actually see when those questions were answered if you want to specifically be able to jump to that point in time. So looking at, I think one area that, I lost my train of thought and now I lost my question. So this crisis is totally different than any other that any of us have lived through. And I think both of you have said through this conversation at various different points, like, I have no idea, I'm not sure what's going to happen, and those kinds of things. And I think that's sort of a natural human desire is to look to leaders, look to the wise ones, look to the ones with experience, and say, what's gonna happen? Help me through this, and those kinds of things. And obviously, none of us has the answer to that, and none of us can predict the future about what's going to happen. But with that in mind, what are there any additional pieces of advice or suggestions that you'd give to business owners and business leaders as they continue to try to work through this crisis?
I guess I would just remind people you're not in this alone. There are a lot of resources out there. Don't be self-isolated while you're at home. So reach out to associations, chambers, NABO, government resources, whatever it may be, so that you can be bouncing ideas or talking to folks about how to change and pivot your business. I see the names of the people that are participating now, and I recognize a lot of them and want to recommend to people certainly to talk to their top 3 customers and to listen to them and see how things have changed in their world, how their demand might change, and the need for your product or service, and really think about how that's going to impact your business in the future. And again, I would suggest 90-day outlook if you can, because as you heard from Aaron, things are changing so rapidly. And who knows when the switch will be flipped and we'll be back to work as normal, if that ever occurs again, exactly like it was. So I suggest you really be thinking and pull a friend or mentor in to assist you in this effort, so you're not going at it alone.
How about for you, Greg?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think of what we haven't already said. And we've covered a lot of territory in a short period of time. We talked, the idea of, how do you get an alternative revenue source? We've seen it already with the things, Downtown Tucson Partnership and the 4th Avenue guys are doing these programs where you can pay into the future, buy gift cards where you get a bump and that type of stuff. How can you do the same thing with your businesses? I was mentioning to Aaron the other day, is that I look at those things and they're getting sold out very quickly, which is a great thing. Mentally where I'm at is that, I'm prepared to do those things, and I have done some of them, both here and in other places in the country. But I'm prepared to do it, and I think a lot of people are. So get out there and figure out what it is that you can make available to somebody where they pay it forward a little bit. It'll be a little pain on the back end because you've already paid, you've already got the money, you already spent it, and you're not going to get it again. But it may help you get through these hard times. I don't know what else to add to this. I think we've covered a lot of stuff.
We have, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, the one of the comments that was in the chat earlier talked about really going back to your CRM system and looking at what are the pain points that your customers are having and those kinds of things. I would simplify that even further and say, you don't even need the CRM system. Like, go out and start go back and talk to your high value customers. Understand the situations that they're in. Are there new pain points that you could solve for them, or ways that you can solve the pain points that they're having that you're already solving for them in a better way, and figure out how to double down on what's working already in your business, and try not to get too sucked into try to deal with all of it. Focus on what's working, double down there, and continue to grow.
Let me add in there. Let's call it the concept of business analytics or whatever. There are things that when we're running these businesses day to day, that we have challenging problems that we just don't have the time to get to. This is the time to get to them. And oftentimes it's business analytics. I really would like to know how often this happens, or how frequently this is, or what is the dollars around this, or the throughput around this or that, or something else. You now have time to do it. Assuming you do. And I would say take a look at that. Try to solve the problems that have been in the back of your mind that you just could never get they could never make it to the front page because of the day-to-day fires that were burning. Well, you've got some free time, go approach that. There's some things that Aaron and I are doing in the community around that topic in general, whereas some community people can help out companies. You go to them and say, what are these things you can't solve? I went to a friend of mine, what is it you're struggling with? well, I really know I need to solve my manufacturing problem, but it just isn't on the first page, on the front burner. Let me introduce you to a guy that can probably help you do that. And Aaron and I are doing that. I imagine Leah's doing it more than we are combined. Go out and figure out what it is that you haven't been able to get to. So when you get back into this thing, you'll have some action plans for yourself.
Yeah, and what comes to mind when you say that, Greg, is the advantage to small business is that you're small and you can be nimble and flexible and you can shift very quickly depending on your industry compared to when it's some of the big corporations. We don't have a lot of those in Tucson, but certainly in the state. So how can you be more nimble or flexible in this time compared to your competition, compared to bigger players in the industry? Could be a good opportunity.
For sure. Leah, there's one question that looks like I overlooked in the Q&A. Mikhail is asking, he says, small businesses are the backbone of America, and a lot of businesses are unable to get PPP funds. How can we build awareness on how technology can decrease costs and allow anyone with a phone to operate a business?
That's a good point. And what comes to mind, and it's probably from my chamber background, is if you have a presentation on this, if you have a platform, if you have a service you're selling, I think chambers of commerce and NABO and groups like that are a good place to present those in a webinar format now and teach small businesses about that. I know myself just from the ladies that I interact with at NABO that I'd say 20% of them were familiar with Zoom before this crisis hit. And now we are all living and working in Zoom. And how can you reach out to your customers on a one-on-one basis using Facebook or Zoom or whatever it might be? So the world has totally shifted. If you've got an opportunity to speak to small business owners about that, I would reach out to a lot of the membership associations in town and talk to them through their kind of educational training that they can provide.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So I will wrap things up by saying thank you. Really appreciate both of you taking an hour plus out of your day to share your insights with everyone. And I hope it was valuable for everybody that's been watching and listening. If folks want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I think my Gmail account on this site, it's greg.teasdale@gmail.com, and Teasdale's Teesdale. Pretty straightforward.
And I put my email kind of at the beginning of the chat, Leah@MarquezPeterson.com. That's my business email. So you're welcome to email me there if you have any further questions.
Beautiful. And I think Donna, who's been watching, probably said it really well. So I'm just going to steal from her. She said, make your own new normal. Don't wait for others to make it for you. And I think that's a great summary of this conversation. Take charge of what happens and keep driving forward.
Yeah, it's good. So, it's very good.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for hosting this Community Investment Corp.
You're welcome. Stay safe out there. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.